You don't see or hear anything, so you never know. There's a halacha that it's forbidden to count Jews. It's forbidden. It's actually halachically forbidden to count Jews, which is why if you've ever been in a shul and they need to check whether there is a minyan, you'll notice that Jews have very strange ways of counting Jews and themselves for a minyan, right? They'll go, Shiur es hamecha, vorech es nachlasecha, or vani baroiv chastecha, voy vesecha, etc. Or, right, my favorite, Baruch ato Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, hamoitzi lecha min haaretz. They'll use different things. Or another one, which is, I don't know that it has any basis at all, is they'll go not one, right?
Yes.
Not one, not two, not three. Solomonic wisdom there. Why do we do that? Because actually it's forbidden to count Jews. It's considered an ayin hara. And when Hashem blessed Avraham Avinu that his children would be as many as the stars of the heavens and the sand of the sea, he said to him, you'll have so many descendants that they won't be able to be counted. So all of a sudden, what's this shtick here that we say Hashem is the same Hashem that blessed Avraham Avinu, that his descendants will not be able to be counted, and there'll be no way to know their number because there'll be so many that it'll be impossible to count. That same Hashem, all of a sudden, because he loves the Jews so much, is constantly counting them because he needs to know exactly how many Jews there are. So let's figure this out. Let's get this straight. Counting Jews is a good thing or not a good thing? Permissible or forbidden? It's not for now, but in Nach, there's a story where David HaMelech counts the Jews, and Rachmana litzlan, because of that, there's a terrible magefa. There's a terrible plague that breaks out because he counted the Jews. Counting Jews is a sin. You're not allowed to count Jews, right? To this day, there are people I know who won't tell you how many grandchildren they have, and who won't tell you how many children they have because we don't say the number, right? How many grandchildren do you have? Not enough. Kain Yirbu. How many children do you have? Way too many. Or whatever it is. They won't say the number because a number is seen as ayin hara. A number is seen as some, a number is seen as limiting. And the source of this probably is the fact that Hashem said to Avraham Avinu, you'll have so many children that they won't be able to be counted. And now all of a sudden we turn around and we say, Mitoichi basan lefanov, because Hashem loves the Jews so much, Hashem is constantly counting them. So let's figure this out. Counting Jews is a good thing or a bad thing? It's Hashem's way of showing the Jews love, or it's an ayin hara? It's something which is permissible. It causes a plague, or it's something that you do, something that's done when Hashem rests his shechina upon the Jewish people. What is going on here with this business of counting the Jews? These are some of the questions that the commentaries discuss here when it comes to this mitzvah that Hashem is once again giving Moshe Rabbeinu of counting Jews. I want to add, before I get to the answer, that there's actually a Shavuos connection to this whole issue. Because there is a medrash that says that when it came time for Hashem to give the Torah to the Jews, it was necessary for every Jew to be present at the giving of the Torah. Shishim ribui, all 600,000 had to be there. And the Medrash says, quote, Ilu hoyu shishim ribui chaser achas, if God forbid from the 600,000 Jews there would be one Jew missing, chas v'sholom lo nitna Torah liYisrael. The Torah would not have been given to the Jewish people. Hashem would have said, no. There's one Jew missing, I'm not going to give the Torah. So again, it's a beautiful thing that Hashem wants to give the Torah to every Jew, and if one Jew is missing, Hashem wouldn't give it. But again, in that very same medrash, we once again find a number, Shishim Ribui. So that means that when Hashem gave the Torah to the Jews, he counted them there also. He came down onto the mountain, took a look around, made sure everybody was there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or not 1, not 2, not 3. He had to say the bracha hamoitzi many times, and then when they were all there, he gave the Torah. But first he counted them. By the way, one of the reasons why you put all 10 fingers on the Lecha Mishnah, on the Challah, when you make a bracha on Shabbos, Hamoitzi Lecha Min Haaretz, is because there are 10 words in the bracha. Again, the bracha being used sometimes to count. Maybe, probably for the Kiddush, we should use the pasuk Vanibrov chastecha v'vesecha. Excuse me, for davening we should use the pasuk, and for the kiddush, to make sure that there are 10 Jews by the kiddush, we should use the bracha. But either way, we find the Torah, so to speak, seems to go both ways when it comes to the counting of the Jews. Both sees it both as something positive and as something negative. So what's the story with counting them? What's the story with counting Jews? So here's how the commentaries explain it. Here's what they say. The reason why we count things is because we value them. Something which isn't valued isn't counted. This has actual relevance, by the way, even in halacha itself. Even in halacha itself, this has relevance. There's a rule called davar shebeminyan loy batel. Davar shebeminyan loy batel means, it's basically halacha's way of saying there's different things which are sold different ways. Some things are sold in weight, some things are sold in volume, some things are sold by number, right? Like if any of you have been to any of the marketplaces or any of the shopping centers recently, they're selling toilet paper, or they were selling toilet paper and eggs, and they were selling rolls of paper towel and things like that. They were borderline rationing them, right? 1 per customer, 2 per customer. So when something becomes incredibly valuable, you start counting it. Davar shebeminyan loy batel, without getting lost in the details of it, means that when something is important, when something is significant, it's counted. The counting shows that there is some importance to it. Okay. So here's the question. Here's what we've got to think about this for a few minutes. When you say that you count something, and the counting of it is reflective of its significance or its importance, what type of significance, what type of importance are we referring to? What is the significance of something when it is counted? Or in better words, when Hashem says to Avraham Avinu, you're going to have so many children and so many descendants, so many offspring that, quote, it'll be impossible to count them because there'll be too many. Well, let's think about that for a minute. What does that mean? Avraham Avinu is going to have so many children that it'll be impossible to count them? There's no such thing. There's no such thing. There's no number that's so great, that's so large, that it cannot be counted. It's actually a contradiction in terms. There's no way to say to a person, imagine I say to a person, you're going to have so much money that you're going to have no idea how much money you have because it's going to be too much to count. Well, number one, there's no such thing, right? May God bless me with it and may I never recover, however the expression goes. Number one, there's no such thing as having money, so much money that can't be counted. There's no such thing as having so many cars that can't. There's no such thing as a number that can't be counted. And number two, even if, what's the purpose in saying you cannot count something? What does that contribute? So let's go back to this. What does Hashem mean when Hashem says to Avraham Avinu, you're going to have, quote, so many, the samti azaracha kachoy layom, like the sand in the sea, that it cannot be counted because it's so many. The truth is, in theory, it's possible to count the sand at the sea too. In theory, maybe not very practical, but in theory, you could put them all into one place and put them through some type of sophisticated system and count them one at a time. You're not going to live, maybe a person won't live long enough, but it is countable. So why did Hashem say to Avraham Avinu, your children will be so many that they won't be able to be counted? Well, the commentaries explain, Hashem wasn't just telling Avraham Avinu that he would have a large number of children. He wasn't just telling Avraham Avinu that he would have many, many descendants. He was talking about their quality. He was talking about their worth and their value and their significance and what they mean and how they would determine their own value and how their value would be determined by others. And Hashem said to Avraham Avinu two things. Hashem said, you're going to have so many children. You're going to have, please God, so many descendants, but they'll never be able to be counted because their value will be beyond number. You see, my friends, it's like this. This is how I understand the idea. It's like this. In life, we place value on different things. How much is any particular thing worth at any given time. How much is a roll of toilet paper worth? How much is a roll of toilet paper worth? It depends when. It depends where. How much is a little bit of food worth? It depends when. It depends where. How much is a piece of real estate worth? It depends when. It depends where. When I was a little child, if you asked a very, very general question, that didn't have, that was too general in nature. So there was a Yiddish expression that you would respond to that, which says, "Wieviel kost a por Hazen far a yosen?" How much is a pair of pants for an orphan? And it was the Yiddish way of saying, well, the question is too general. What kind of pair of pants? Where? What? And when? Etc. We tend to use many, many tools to value and to determine the value of something. The marketplace has a way of valuing things financially. Personally, we have a way of valuing things on a personal level. How valuable are our relationships? How valuable are our experiences? How valuable is our schedule? How valuable are these things to us in life? Different tools, different methods are used to value things. In the vast majority of cases, things are valued in terms of how much they contribute to others. Things are valued in terms of how much they can give, how valuable they can be, how much of an asset they can be to those around them. They're valued in terms of what they do. And so when something is counted, what you're really saying, when I count how much money I have or how many friends I have or things like that, what you're really doing is you're counting and you're saying, how much of this do I have? How valuable is it to me? And this is the way to determine the number. Okay. What about a person? How do you count a person? How do you evaluate what a person is worth? How do we evaluate the inherent value and worth of a Jew? What is a Jew inherently, in essence, worth? What is a person, what is a Jew worth? Well, the true answer is that there's no way to evaluate this. From a Torah perspective, there's no way to know because its value is infinite. His or her value, the value of a Yid, is infinite. What state is the Jew in? Doesn't matter. What does the Jew contributing to others? Some Jews contribute more. Some Jews contribute less, apparently. What's the person's job? What's their function? What do they do? Some do this, some do that. How do you evaluate them? There's two ways. You can either evaluate them based on what they're doing, based on what they're giving and contributing, or you can talk about their inherent value. And here the Torah says, it depends how you evaluate the Jew. If you evaluate the Jew wrong, you're not allowed to count them. If you evaluate the Jew right, you are allowed to count them. Here's 3 examples. Number 1, certain things in halacha require a certain number of Jews, right? A minyan requires 10 Jews to be physically present. Certain brachas, there's a bracha you can make if you only have 600,000 Jews. Witnesses have got to be 2 Jews. We find that there is a number. Certain cases, certain halachas require a certain number of individuals. Okay. When it comes to a minyan, let's say, for example, where you need 10 Jews, what are the quality of these Jews? Do they have to be learned? Do they have to be Talmidei Chachamim? Do they have to be tzaddikim? Do they have to be Rishoim? Do they have to be, what type of people qualify for a minyan? Answer, there is no one particular quality that's necessary. 10 Jews is a minyan. 10 Jews is a minyan, that's it. 600,000 Jews, you make there's a special bracha you make. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam chacham harozim. What type of 600,000 Jews? Religious, not religious? Intelligent, not intelligent? No difference. 600,000 Jews, you make this particular bracha. Azoi. Sometimes we say, what type of Jew exactly you're dealing with doesn't matter. 10 Jews, you have a minyan. What if some of them are religious and some of them are not? As a rule, 10 Jews is a minyan. Finished. I'll give you another example. Let's say, Rahman al-Itzlan, may Hashem protect us, a person is in a life-threatening situation. A life-threatening situation. Somebody wrote in the comment, 10 Jewish men are required for a minyan. Yes, just so we're clear. You need 10 Jewish men. Thank you. Let's say Rahman al-Islam lo yaleinu, a person is in a situation of pikuach nefashos. Right? This person is in a life-threatening situation. It's Shabbos, and we need to desecrate the Shabbos in order to save this person's life. We need to desecrate the Shabbos in order to save the person's life, and we're not even sure how long the person will live once the Shabbos has been desecrated and the person's life has been saved. Which Jew should desecrate the Shabbos to save this person's life? Answer: the Jew who can save their life first. What if there's a person sitting right there who's a groiser tzaddik, very holy man, and he looks at the person who's in a situation of pikuach nefashos and goes, that guy's Shabbos is not worth me desecrating my Shabbos over it. Let somebody else go. Halacha calls that person a murderer. Your Shabbos is not any more valuable than his Shabbos. Your tefillin is not any more valuable than his tefillin. Your kosher is not any more valuable than his kosher. Go and desecrate your Shabbos so the other Jew can live. In the storybooks, I doubt this story is actually true, but it's a cute story anyways. In the storybooks, they tell a story to illustrate this point. They say, there was once two brothers, and one brother was incredibly successful, incredibly wealthy financially, and the other brother was impoverished and poor. And Hashem saw it such that the wealthy brother him and his wife were not able to have children. And the impoverished brother, the poor brother, had, Baruch Hashem, 16 children. And the two brothers were very close, and they would talk every day. And one day, the wealthy brother is complaining about Nebuch, how much him and his wife suffer over the fact that they have no children. And the poor brother is talking to his brother, and he tells his brother how him and his wife and family are suffering over the fact that they have no money. So one says to the other, you know something? I have so much money, and I don't need all this money. And you have so many children, and I don't have any children. How about you sell me one of your children? After all, you have 16, right? And I'll give you $1 million, $2 million, $10 million, whatever it is, in exchange for one of your children. In a moment of desperation, this is the way the mashal goes. In a moment of desperation, the impoverished brother agrees. After all, he has, Baruch Hashem, 16 children. No, beseder. I'll sell you one of my children, Mistama, the one that gives me the most agmas nefesh and the most trouble. I'll sell him to you for enough money, and my problems will be solved and your problems, and the child will be very well taken care of, and he'll have a wonderful life, and he'll go and live with his adopted parents, his uncle and aunt, and be shalom al Yisrael. After all, I have 16 of them. They agree on a particular date. They're going to do the exchange. He's going to wire him the money. He's going to pick up one of his kids. The particular day comes, and the impoverished brother calls his brother up and says, I'm sorry, I changed my mind. I'm not selling you one of my children. Go figure. I'm not selling you one of my children. He says, why not? We had an agreement. We had a deal. He says, the agreement and the deal we had was under a mistaken notion. What was the mistaken notion? I thought I had 16 children. No, you don't have 16 children? No, I don't. How many children do you have? The brother said. I was at all 16 brisen. He said, I only have one. You only have one. What are you talking about? I've seen the family pictures. You have 16 children. No, he says, I don't have 16 children. I have one Yankel, and I have one Zalman, and I have one Moshe, and I have one Rochela, and I have one Bluma, and I have one Esterel. Only one. How many Jews are there? It depends how you assess them. If you assess them in terms of, right, us Jews, we love to talk about how we're such a small population of society and we win so many Nobel Peace Prizes and we make such great contributions in the realms of science and of medicine, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's all beautiful. It is. But there's a hidden danger there. The Torah says, don't ever count the Jews. Don't ever think you know the value of a person, the full value. Don't ever allow yourself to think that you know how much someone else is worth. And even more than that, don't ever allow yourself to assess your own worth and your own value by the way other people count you. Don't count Jews, ever. If you have to know if you have enough Jews for a minyan, say a posuk, or say not one and not two. Don't give a number to them, because every Jew, in the words of Avraham Avinu, in the words of Hashem to Avraham Avinu, you'll have so many children and they won't be able to be counted. Who won't be able to be counted? Every Jew won't be able to be counted, because every Jew's value will be infinite and insurmountable and inconceivable. Every Jew is a world in and of itself. Don't ever give value. Don't ever attribute a number or place a specific limitation ever. Chas v'shalom, big aveira. That type of counting is forbidden. But the Ribbono Shel Olam, who loves the Jews, at the same time, is constantly counting them. Constantly. Because when Hashem counts the Jews, it means something else entirely. Counting also has another very interesting, what does it mean when Hashem counts the Jews? Counting Jews has another very interesting quality. I'll tell you what it is. When you count, everybody's counted as one. The Talmidei Chachamim, or those who are great tzaddikim, one each. The simpletons, one each. Everybody is counted as one. When Hashem counts Jews, Hashem is not counting them because he's giving a defined, limited value to them. When Hashem counts Jews, Hashem is counting them because he's reaching so deep within the Jew to that infinite place where every Jew on that level is the same and is equal. I want to tell you a story. This is an actual story, not a mashal. So I'm not sure if you know this, but Chabad traces its origins to communist Russia. That's where many of us come from originally. Well, not me personally, but many of us come from our families, my family, my wife's family. Communist Russia. That's where the Chabad movement for many years, well, after the revolution, existed. Before that, Tsarist Russia. Many Chabad Hasidim and many Chabad Rebbes, while we're at it, had rap sheets under the Russian or communist government for being Russian criminals. What you see, this business of rabbis going to jail, by the way, this is not a new phenomenon. This started a while ago. Many Chabad rabbis, many Chabad Hasidim, the Chabad Rebbes themselves, many of them sat in jail in Russia. My great-grandfather, may his soul rest in Gan Eden, whose yahrzeit was last week, sat in Russian prison, and they spoke about it with great pride. So the story goes that there's one particular chassid, and he's rotting away in some Russian cell. And he's deprived of food. He's deprived of the most basic, fundamental human dignity. He's deprived, of course, of his religious rights, and they're really trying to break this guy. And they can't break him. They break him physically, but they can tell that psychologically and emotionally, he's not breaking. The communists were not happy with that. They wanted to break this guy. So they keep thinking to themselves, what can we do? They starve him, they torture him, Rahman al-Islam, they interrogate him. Nothing's working. They're trying to get into his head. They're trying to hook him. They came up with a brilliant strategy. They said, look, this guy may not be very complicit with the communist government, but he's definitely an intelligent man. And he's been rotting away in this Russian prison cell without any stimulation. So they called in two Russian scientists, And they asked them to give him a presentation on how large the universe is, on how large the world is. This is probably in the 30s or maybe even in the 20s. So they call in two professors, very intelligent Russian goyim, and they sit this chassid down, and they say to him, we want to talk to you about the size of the universe. And they start explaining to him, in those days, there was probably, God knows, 1 billion people in the world. How much is 1 billion? And how large the universe is, and how far the planets are. And the nearest star is 800 light years away, which means that if you travel at the speed of light, which is 180,000 miles per second, you'll get there in 800 years. And that's just the nearest star. And then you have the furthest stars, and some of the stars already exploded, and their light is still coming to us now. And the size of the universe is hundreds, thousands, millions, billions of light years. And the size of the universe is enormous. You, they said to the chassid, and I, but you are less significant than a piece of dust. You're smaller than a bacteria cell. You walking around here like some groise macher thinking you're going to make a difference. You're here today, gone tomorrow. You're a worthless speck of existence. Here today, gone tomorrow. This is what they tell him. And they explain it to him from a scientific perspective. They give him an hour and a half shiur, Fine. He sits through the whole thing. The professors go home, and the chassid goes back to his cell. No, a couple of days later, they take a look at him. The guy is strong as ever. His spirit is intact. His courage is intact. He's on fire. They sit down with him and they say to him, can we ask you a question? Did you not just hear how small and insignificant you are? Did you not just understand that the world is so large? You're the tiniest of existences. You're one tiny human being. How does that not discourage you? He said, I'll tell you. You're asking me, I'll tell you. Chassid says, the Mishnah says, why did the Rabbeinu Shalom create Adam Rishon as an individual being? Everything else, all animals, all beasts, all birds, all fish, everything was created, Zohar and Nekeva together, in pairs. The only thing that was created, Yechidi alone, was Adam Rishon, and then Hashem created the first woman from Adam. The Gemara says, why did Hashem do that? To teach you, says the Gemara, that one human being, that one Jew, is worth the entire world. That the whole world was created for one Jew, for one person. And every individual is obligated to say, Bishvili nivra ha'olam, the whole world was created for me. From Adam Rishon and on, every human being, every Yid, every human being, all descendants of Adam Rishon, should say, I'm worth the entire world. All of existence was created. It's not supposed to make a person arrogant, God forbid, or selfish. It's supposed to show a person that their value is inherently so powerful that, and so great that all of existence was worth it for all of existence to be created just so this person should exist. So the chassid said, I had always studied this Mishnah. I always knew that it was worth it that I should walk around saying, Bishvili nivra olam, the whole world was created for me. The chassid said, but what did I know how big the world was? I thought it was from the mikveh to my shtibel, to the marketplace where I buy tomatoes and back home. The whole world was created for me, very nice. But my world was so small. Now he says, you sit me down with these two professors and they explain to me that the world is huge. We're talking about galaxies and universes and unbelievable. And to think that all of that the Rebbeinu Shalom created for me. Thank you so much, said the chassid, for that particular education. I'm now more infused and more invigorated and more excited about my existence. I'm more determined than ever when I think about what a vast existence Hashem made. And it's all for me. How much is a Jew worth? What's the value of a person? How much is a Jew worth? It can either be the greatest sin in the world to count a Jew, or it can be the greatest sign of love to count a Jew. It depends who's doing it. If another human being is doing it, we say to another human being, if another Jew is counting and they weren't instructed to do so by Hashem, we say to the Jew, don't count Jews. Don't you put your perceived value on them. You have no idea what a Jew is worth, and you never will. You don't even know what you yourself are worth. Don't allow yourself, don't count other Jews, and don't allow yourself to be counted by others. Don't see your own value in terms of the way other people perceive you. Never. But that's only when human beings count. What about when Hashem counts? When Hashem counts, Hashem is not counting because he's, God forbid, limiting the value of a person. When Hashem counts Jews, Hashem sees into their deepest recesses, into their deepest essence. When Hashem counts Jews, Hashem counts the very essence, the core of their existence. Hashem is counting, so to speak, his own children that he loves and values unconditionally and for all eternity. Hashem can count Jews. And when he does, it's the greatest sign of love. What do we mean that it's the greatest sign of love? What's the greatest love that Hashem gives the Jew? Where Hashem says to the Jew, your value is unconditional no matter what you contribute. You're counted as one, whether you're the biggest tzaddik or, God forbid, in progress en route of being such. I'll tell you why I think this concept is so incredibly important in the world we live in today. In the world we live in today, and I don't only mean in quarantine, I mean in general, we tend to evaluate people based on exterior, superficial things. You know, I read something that really touched me. Open your hearts. Listen to this. Not long ago, as in 50 years ago, approximately, what was considered the most personal, the most private, the most confidential piece of information of a person's life? If you even ask them about it, the question was perceived as rude and disgusting. How dare you ask me about something so private? What was it 50 years ago? It was the intimate physical life of a person. Their physical intimacy, their sexual life was considered so private. Nobody talked about it. Nobody spoke about it. You didn't ask somebody what was going on with them in that area of their life. The question would be perceived as disgusting and rude. Today, everybody talks about it. Everybody's all over the internet. It's a gross mitzvah. Not only that, you shout about it and you make a big deal. You want the whole world to know, and everybody has to accept it noch. And if not, chutzpah. And if you ask somebody about it, the question is not considered rude at all. But there is something else. I have a friend of mine who told me he came to yeshiva one day just with shoes. He wasn't wearing socks. So his Rosh Yeshiva called him over and said to him, I have a very personal question to ask you. He says, I need to know how your socks life is doing. How's your socks life doing? But today, if you ask somebody that question, very common. Everybody asks, everybody talks. What is today the most sacred piece of information that people don't talk about? What is today the most private and confidential thing that nobody discusses? And if you ask somebody about this, the question is rude. You know what it is? Money. Nobody talks about how much money they have. Nobody talks about how much they're worth. Even with your psychologist and with a therapist, where you talk about the deepest recesses of your heart, we don't talk about how much money I have. And if you ask somebody, how much are you worth? Excuse me, mind your own business. How much money we have in today's society is more of an indicator of how much we're worth than what's going on with our relationships. How common is it when you meet somebody for the first time, you ask them, what do you do for a living? Oh, you're this? Oh, you're that? What do you do? Oh, you. We use these things to determine people's value. And the Torah says, It's a terrible, terrible sin. What are you doing? Evaluating somebody by how much money they have? Evaluating somebody by what they do for a living? They say about one of the great Rebbes that he was once on a train and somebody said to him, "What do you do?" He said, "What do I do? I'm a teacher." Later on, the guy found out who he was. He said, "Rebbe, you said about yourself that you're a teacher?" He said, "Well, you didn't ask me who I am. You asked me what I do." You see, my friends, today's society is trying to convince us that what we do determines who we are. Now, don't get me wrong, what we do is incredibly important, but it doesn't determine who we are. We aren't defined by what we do. Some people have the ability to do more, or apparently more. Some people have the ability to do less, or apparently less. Doesn't define our existence and our value and our worth. Never. The Torah says human beings who have fleshike eigen, who have simple fleshly eyes, should never count other human beings, should never count other Jews. You don't know what you're counting. You don't know what you're looking at. You don't know what it's worth. Don't give it a value because you have no idea what you're talking about. Not even yourself. Not even yourself. Don't look at yourself and go, "Oh, I did this, I did that, I didn't do this, I didn't do that." You're more valuable, you're deeper, you're stronger than even you yourself perceive. Don't count yourself. But that's only a human being. What about the Rabbeinu Shalom? What about Hashem? Hashem is counting the Jews every single hour, Hashem is constantly counting the Jews. What does it mean when we say Hashem is counting the Jews? Hashem needs a number? Hashem doesn't need a number. He's counting every Jew as one. And that's all there is. There's one Yankel, and there's one Zalman, and there's one Baruch. He's not tallying them up at the end. Yes, human beings need to know how many soldiers we have to go to war. The Torah gives us a number, of course. From Hashem's perspective, the counting here is not for the sake of the number. The counting here is to tap every single Jew on the shoulder and say, "You are infinite. You are greater and deeper and more powerful than you yourself perceive." Hashem says, "I see it, you don't." And you know when we make mention of this? You know when we make mention of this? We make mention of this every single morning when we open our eyes, and the first thing we say, Moida ani lefanecha, the prayer concludes with the words, Rabba emunasecha. We say, Hashem, your emunah is unbelievable. And the commentaries explain, what are we doing? Complimenting Hashem's emunah? Hashem needs us to tap him on the back and say, Rabbeinu Shalom, your emunah is fantastic. Amazing. No. Hashem doesn't need to be reminded how wonderful his emunah is. What emunah are we talking about? We're not talking about God's belief in God. We're talking about God's belief in me. We're talking about Hashem's belief in every single one of us. When we wake up in the morning, before we allow our hang-ups and our complexes to get the better of us, we look up to heaven and we say, Ribbono Shel Olam, Rabba emunasecha, you, the Ribbono Shel Olam, love and believe in me. You count me every single second from your perspective. You evaluate me the way you see me. You evaluate me the way you know the truth of the deepest levels of my soul. You have belief in me, even where I don't. That's the kind of counting that Hashem does every single second, and it never stops. It's not a counting to know the number because there is no number. It goes back to Hashem's promise to Avraham Avinu. Not just that he would have many children, not just that he would have many descendants, but that their value would be seen for what it truly is. And what is the value of a Jew? Something that can never be evaluated and can never be counted and can never be defined. And so when it comes time for the Ribbono Shel Olam to give the Torah to the Jewish people, the Medrash says Hashem looked around and made sure every single Jew was there. And if, God forbid, one Jew would have been missing, Hashem wouldn't have given the Torah to the Jews. What about Jews who don't study Torah? What about Jews who don't know about Torah? What about Jews who God forbid, sin against the Torah? What about those Jews that we look at and we snub our noses and we go, Yenim? What about them? Hashem says, no. I won't give the Torah until every single Jew is here. You don't know what I see in a Jew, Hashem says. You don't know what I see in every single Yid. You don't know the potential. You don't know the soul. Hashem says, I know it. You don't. You don't count Jews, Hashem says. I'm going to count them. And when I do, I will empower the Jew to be all it is, to live out their potential. I conclude with this. Not sure if any of you have ever been to Jewish dinners. Not sure if any of you have ever been to one of these organizational Mitzvah Shabbos, Malava Malkus, where they raise money for yeshivas and for schools and all the rest of it. You may never heard of such a thing. They serve dinner and they give speeches until the wee hours of the morning. The final speaker is always called the keynote speaker because they give him a key and a note that says, when you're done, lock the door and shut the lights. But if you've ever stayed awake through any of the honoree speeches, they all say the same thing in one form or another. Every honoree gets up there and says, there was a time in my life where I was not doing well. There was a time in my life where I was struggling. You know why I made it? You know how I was successful? Because there was somebody who believed in me. Who was that somebody who believed in them? A spouse, a parent, a sibling, a friend, somebody. Somebody believed in me. And that gave me the courage and the strength to reach deep inside my heart and my kishkis and find the grit that was necessary to power through the struggles and to persevere and to overcome. That's what they all say in one form or another. Hashem is constantly counting the Jews. It's Hashem's way of tapping every Jew every morning and saying, Rabba Monasecha, I, the Rabbanu Shalom, believe in you. Even when nobody else does. Even if, God forbid, nobody else does. Even when a Jew, God forbid, doesn't even believe in himself. Hashem says, even at that moment, I'm still counting you. Don't ever let yourself get counted by other human beings who determine value by things that are so fleeting, here today, gone, nonsense. We call it chitzonius, superficiality. Never. Always see, a Jew should always learn to count themselves the way Hashem counts Jews, and never the way mere mortals count Jews. For mortals look only at the exterior, and only Hashem truly knows the value of a Jew. With that, I wish you all a wonderful Shabbos and all the very best. Please join us next week on Thursday morning at 11 o'clock for a Shiur specifically with Hashem's help in honor of Shavuos.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi Kessler.
Thank you so much.
Once again,
Thank
everybody, remember not to say Tachon. Remember to say Hallel.
Yeah.
The most wonderful bracha.
Rabbi
We just want to wish everybody a good Shavuos, because next week we won't be able to join you because it will be already Yom Tov in Eretz Yisrael.
I didn't think about
Chag Sameach.
From your favorite Levi.
Oh, favorite lady, Yasher Koyach.
Thank you.
Thank you so every much. Word.
Thank you.
Thank you. See
Thank you, Rabbi Kesselman. Bye. I gotta go. I have to go.
Be well, guys. Be well, guys.
Ron had his whole family behind.
Huh? Yom Yerushalayim.
What?
There's 75.
Keep doing this even after.
You know who was on today?
Oh, I see the Kohen
Looking to
Gadol.
see who left.
Kohen Gadol, you were so quiet today.
This Miriam Fleischman from Las Vegas, Peggy's sister-in-law.
God pressed him to say hello.
Wonderful to see you.
I'm looking who's